socket chat will use the database to store all the messages users have sent. So if you come back into a chat later, you will still get all the old messages, and that's what we store in the database. And therefore we need to model some stuff for our database, which will then be mapped by Mongoose. So we got perhaps, oh come on, where is it? Oh, there it is. We got a chat group model, and then we should also have a chat message model. So this is the way how Mongoose works. And also we need a file with some routes to our API, so we can call some REST or make some REST calls later. Therefore, we need to add to our server.js the routes file. So we call require, and this should be at app and then routes. So now we can simply call routes with our app. So this is just a way of splitting up the code. We could have all of this here, but we're good programmers, so we split this up into multiple files. All right, so to craft a chat group model, it's almost always the same scheme with Mongoose. First of all, we call require on Mongoose, and then we create a scheme. So chat group schema is new mongoose dot scheme or schema, and inside you define how your table looks. So with SQL, this would be a create table with all the fields and how they look like. With a Mongoose case, it's just like this. You can add fields, you can add the type, and they will be generated then inside the database if you save a new model. It's kind of, perhaps a bit creepy if you come from SQL and it looks that easy, but it's really a super cool way. And that's exactly the reason why we are using MongoDB in this case. So then you have to make this one available. So everyone knows about this chat group scheme, and it's available as chat group. Now, if we create a new chat group, and we will do this in a second, it will be stored inside our database along with the name, and it will automatically have some generated ID from MongoDB. So in our case, we will just define some chat groups per default, and users can join those chat groups. We will not make dynamic chat groups with users because I wanted to leave out the user registration in this example, because building the user auth blows up the code a lot. You can check out the JSON Web Token course, which shows how to use JSON Web Tokens, but that's without MongoDB, but still you can easily connect it then if you want to with this one. So let's continue with the chat message, because, or perhaps let me copy all of this. That's a bit more easy. So chat message, and chat message. And our chat message will have a from name. In general, this would be a reference to a user, but we're not using users. They will just pick a name inside the app, and that's it. So we want to make this as simple as possible, but still learn the most of it. Of course, a message has a message, which is a string. And then finally, a message needs to be assigned to a chat. And here we need, or we can use a very cool function, which is referencing something else. So we can say the type of this value is mongoose schema types object ID, and we reference a chat group. So if we save a new chat message and set an ID for the chat, We could later, if we want to fill this value on the, or populate how it's called with Mongoose, this field, or simply leave it as an ID, but this is more or less the join of MongoDB. So a chat message has from, a message, and a chat ID. And finally, we also use a simple plugin, which we need to import first. So timestamps, and this will automatically add a timestamp of the current date to each created entry. So we can simply apply this plugin and don't have to specify any more fields right here. So this is our chat message scheme, and this is already all of our database modeling that we need right now. Now it gets a bit more tricky with our roots. So first of all, we need to import our two models. Require, let me see, models, chat group, and then we also need the, chat message. Okay. Now we're importing this from our server.js. So we need an export here, and we called it with the app we have created, so we can use this app here. And at this point, we can define get or post or delete routes, whatever we like. And first of all, let's set up a few. So we need to get chats. We want to have a post, so we can create some dummy chats in our example. And finally, we also want a get to chats, and then a specific chat ID. And this is by using this syntax, we can get this param quite easily. And this will help us to get all the historic messages for one chat. Perhaps we start with post because we need to create some data. This is the standard way how those calls look and how we can define some API routes. So we just create a dummy chat and we say new chat group. So this will more or less create a new object. As we know, on our dummy chat, we can set the name. So we call the one general chat, and then we hit dummy chat.save. And this line will save our new created object directly to our database. We will see this in a second. I'm not telling you any lies. It's the truth. So let's create dummy chat 2 as well, and perhaps call this one Ionic chat. To end our call, or the API call, in that case we just return, I think 201 should be created, right? And then if you want, you can add some JSON like this. So very dummy implementation. Now if you run this, you don't get any errors, which is good. And let's make a dummy call. I use a simple tool called RoboMongo to inspect my database. You can easily connect to your local host simply at the address of the MongoDB, and you can connect to it. And also Postman to test our post routes. So we're making a post request to localhost 5000 chats. Let's see, success true, which is kind of good. The body is actually empty. And now we should see two new entries with the general and Ionic chat. So let's open the collections. There are chat groups, and you can see two objects are created. General chat, Ionic chat, and both have a special object ID assigned to them. Okay, so we will just use this route one time to create our chats, and now we will continue with getting the actual chats so we can display them inside our app. and therefore we call chat group, and this is again making use of Mongoose, calling find. If we specify an empty object, we will just get all the chat group models, and I think we don't need anything else here. And if we're lucky, we should get back the data. Sorry. So if we're lucky, we can return our chat data as JSON. If we hit an error, we perhaps return a status of, I don't know, 400, and send also the message, which is the error. So let's call it again. And this time we're making a GET request to chats. And we see we get both chats with their ID back. And this call will be used inside our Ionic app to display the list of chats. Of course, there could be more chats. Oh, come on, what's going on today? So this is enough for our app, which means we have created dummy chats. We can get our chat data, including the IDs, from the database. So this is not something we have in cache. This is really an application you could use like this. And now the last one, which we cannot yet test. We could enter some dummy data, but I don't think we need this. In this case, we want to find all chat messages for a specific chat, and a chat message always has a chat, so we can filter for the exact chat we have specified in the params of our request. So this will access this value. Okay. Again, we don't need anything else here, and then I think I can use this one and just return the messages here. So we could run this now, and as you know, these are the chats. And if we would append this ID here, yes, we would get the messages, but of course it's empty, so we get an empty array. Okay, so we got our routes set up, we got the chat models set up, and the last missing piece is now actually the socket connection, which we will add in the next video.